Hello everybody, Mike with Spray Jones coming to you with another video 4 in our 5-part series about Let's Learn Spray Foam. In today's coverage, we are going to go over how should we use the spray foam. So what I've come up with is, rather than just droning on with endless amounts of details, let's take a look at a composite. This could be any house in America, in Canada. It's pretty typical of your standard single family home. And it's got a garage and it's got a second story. And I picked this one because it's going to cover off most of the common areas that we would be using open or closed cell foam. For the most part, if you are an open cell foam user, you can imagine in your state, your county, your province that you're going to do your walls, your roof with your open cell foam. But for the majority of our Canadian climate and where we are out in the West, where it's fairly cold, most of our clients are going to go with closed cell foam. And the reason being is that when you are using open cell foam and it's particularly shaved flush in a 2x6 wall, you're going to be running with a 6 mil polyethylene vapor barrier. So most people, when they go and choose a spray foam product where we are, want to go without a vapor barrier, and that means closed cell foam. And we'll show you how we do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to alternate between looking at these plans and sort of picking them out and picking the areas that we would need to do, and then we'll take and mix some B-roll footage of the spray foam being applied. So let's get into it. Let's take a look first and foremost at our wall areas. Typical walls that we see are going to be 9 feet on the main level, 8 feet on the second level. Usually where we are, we're using an open web truss. States, provinces, different areas, people might be using solid. Our location, we have a very good truss manufacturer, and they have done a heck of a job marketing the open web truss. And I believe the open web truss between floors is the best possible system for any type of construction. It's a commercial grade solution, and what it allows is the passage of piping and ductwork through the open webs versus solid webs or even solid dimensional floor joists that are solid, like the twist, as we all know. So engineered systems create silent floors, non-twisting floors, creaking floors, and what have you. But when you have a solid web, it doesn't allow the passage of your ductwork and your plumbing very easily through it. So open web provides that. So you would see about a 16 to an 18-inch open web truss in between these, which would also be spray foamed. So we'd be doing the wall in here, we'd be doing the wall on the second level and the perimeter of the joists all the way around. Roofing situation, on a 7/12 pitch, we may or may not have the client want to opt to get the spray foam. Obviously, I'm an advocate of only spraying to the underside of the roof deck as much as possible. Here's an example on 7/12, and I'm actually going to start at the top down here. Here is an example of our 7/12 pitch roof. Now, you do not have enough space to crawl up into the attic, put the drywall down on here on the ceiling, run all the penetrations for lights and wires and what have you, and then crawl out towards the edges and expect to get the closed cell spray foam down onto the plate, because this is the most critical function part, is getting it down onto the plate and then working your way back. Now, I have a specific video on this. It's an old video. It's going back a couple of 2-3 years now, called Spraying Down to Drywall, Should We Be Doing This? And I explain emphatically that this is a big no-no. The trade-off that you're going to be running into problems with that detail is that you could push the drywall down, right? You can buckle it, you can cause it to go downward. Particularly with closed cell foam, there's an enormous amount of force there, and things take the path of least resistance. Hopefully they rise upward, but when you're fighting gravity, the sheetrock can go down if it gets between the lower cord and the board. At that point, you've got no recourse to fix this, and it's going to be wavy, lumpy, and bumpy. The other issue is your seasonal timing on this. Where we are, it's going to be very, very cold from, say, November sometime all the way until the beginning of April sometime. So to have a freezing cold attic that is vented to the outside and is in the sub-zeros, we're talking 11 Fahrenheit or 5 Fahrenheit or -20 or what have you, you're not going to be able to heat this up to warm this to be within tolerances of what the spray foam can be sprayed. Plus, you're working in the dark. The installer has to get up inside here, risk not falling through. It's just a convoluted way of installing the foam insulation. So what I suggest is that closed cell foam be sprayed with the rafter heels closed off to the underside of the roof deck. You guys that are installing down in the southern United States open cell foam, that's fine, but I really still like closed cell foam to the underside of the roof deck because of isolating and stopping leaks. And there's a great debate on that. We're not going to go into this. I'll do a specific video at some point on the whole leak debate as to whether you want to let the water through the foam and into the inside, or whether you want to keep any water that would penetrate through a shingle or through a compromised area on the roof deck. And let's be clear, that is compromised. It's not supposed to be that way. Where do you want to isolate the damage to? So underside of the roof deck, we'd have the client blocking in the eaves at time of construction. The roof vents would be deleted. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. If they're not, then we're going to put cardboard over top of them. And with a home that's in the wintertime or fall, we're going to put heat inside the structure, and then we're going to start from the top down and get a first layer on that roof and then work our way down. Going back into the walls here, you can see what I was discussing. Here's your 9-foot ceilings. They're using an 18-inch open web truss, and then we'd be spraying the foam into here and into the walls. When we use closed cell foam in the walls, we're trying to get a nominal thickness somewhere in the neighborhood of 3.5 to 4 inches of closed cell. I'm hoping in time that we're going to get, in the not too distant future, we're going to get the recognition that the spray foam deserves and start getting less mandatory R values, where we're not playing the same game that the fibrous guys are, where we're having to play their R value game. They keep moving the goalposts and we keep having to put more and more of an expensive product. If it was fair in the industry, this is something to pay attention to. If it was completely fair, a level playing field, we'd be coming out and putting about an inch and a half of closed cell foam on the walls, and that'd be it. We'd be totally code compliant. And don't think that the fibrous industry doesn't know that. They absolutely do. They know that we would come and kick their patootie all the way around the block and home again if we were allowed to actually be putting our spray foam in at what is a nominal effective thickness, and that would be 1.5 inches. I'd say an inch, but I'd say 1.5 inches just to cover nails and screws that are sticking through, right? And that happens, they lose market share. I mean, they could go and start offering spray foam, and maybe they will, but they're also giving up multiple billions, tens of billions of dollars in bat and poly industry. So they're not going to do that. They're not going to fight without a huge battle. Carrying on, while we're still on this page, you're seeing a cross-sectional slice of the bonus room floor. We call them bonus room floors, but any type of second-level floor that's over top of cold space. This could be a deck. This happens to be the garage. Here's the garage walls, 10 feet high. They're putting in a grade beam. It's on piles. They're going to have a cement floor. But this shows an 18-inch open web joist. Now, we've changed our details on this many years ago. We used to try and get the spray foam right direct to the underside of the floor, whether it be open cell foam. A lot of times we did it in open cell foam because there was a lot of piping and ductwork in here. And we found we encountered problems with water lines that were just a little bit lower than they should have been, P-traps for drains on sinks and showers and toilets. And as a result, we were running into extremely cold days where the garage wasn't insulated at all, wind was blowing, and these P-traps and water lines were freezing. So we have since changed, and this detailed drawing represents this. We're going to come in a two-step fashion. We're going to come and do all the perimeter outside edge of the bonus room floor. I'll show you what that looks like. So here's the main floor plan, and the dotted line here is showcasing where the second level floor is to be, and it even notes spray foam. So what we would do is we would come and we would do a perimeter edge of the joist, because the floor joists are going to continue out over. This is where the beam is pocketed into the walls for structure. So the floor joists are running this way, north-south, let's say. We would come and first spray the perimeter all the way around the edge. We're going to leave the wall to the house open because that's going to be circulating air. So step one is to spray the perimeter, and then step two is to have the builder sheet the underside of the floor with a material, and then come in and spray it. Here again is that floor detail. So we've sprayed the perimeter, in essence 360 degrees around, warm to warm. This is sheeted. Now, something on that, it's best to sheet it with something that's fairly solid. When you start using Typar or Tyvek, or very thin membranes, there's not much to adhere to as far as they're being adhered to the floor joist. So you get this drum head, this banjo head effect where the skin, if you will, is rippling and wants to move. It's hard when you're probing the depth to know that you're hitting something solid, and as a result, it's an issue. Code-wise, too, depending on what your state and county and province has to say, return airs where they're circulating air forcefully, sending air in and warm air in and cold air back out, and using this as a return air plenum is probably going to require some sort of a protection of foam plastics. At least it does in our area. They also want to see this area protected, so they're talking, sheetrock or something, which is fine because these days sheetrock is a lot cheaper than OSB. But when we're doing these, there's a couple of really good ways to do them. You can do one trip out and then have it sheeted, or the second way of doing it is with an attic space is do all of it external. So spray the closed cell foam to the outside of the joist in one trip. They've already sheeted and closed this off, and then wrap your foam around to the outside because you're not interfering with any drywall. No one's going to see it. It's going to be up inside the attic. So in essence, rather than putting the foam insulation here on the inside of the joist, you're putting it to the external. And you can lap this joint at the plate here where the wall meets. This is a typical area for air leakage. People usually complain about this area being cold. So you can bring the closed cell foam here and down and wrap it around. If you're doing these in half-pound foam, that's fine too. We've just found that most of our clients are wanting extremely warm floors, and we've gone with keeping the height. When you're only dealing with 12 feet or 10 feet, they don't want to drop down here 8, 9, 10 inches to a foot. I've had a few situations where the drafting people have really messed this up. They don't have a 10 or 12-foot height. They've got a 8 or a 9-foot garage ceiling, and they have absolutely no room for the drop down. The busier that you are with plumbing and duct work, the more sense this drop down design makes. We've been there, done that, where we've tried to go around all of the plumbing and all of the piping and all of the duct work with open cell and with closed cell. It's just an exercise in frustration. You're at the roulette table, and the odds are against you that you are going to miss something and not get foam around a pipe entirely, into a crack, into a crevice, into a corner, into an elbow, and that will be the area. It just takes like a quarter-sized area of mist foam or ultra-thin foam to cause a pipe to freeze up. Walls are fairly typical. Joist ends pretty typical. You got to watch that your builder hasn't gone and put an enormous amount of duct work in around the outside perimeter edges. It can make it really difficult for getting in. 18-inch open web wood joist is what this stands for. It's industry standard. We just don't see too many solid web or of any kind. There are some, and I mean that means they've got to put ductwork down below, and then they've got a bulkhead or do some sort of a drop ceiling. So most people are wanting this 9-foot ceiling plus. Some are going to 10s. If we're doing closed cell foam in the walls, we're going to do 3.5 to 4 inches, and then we're going to do a really good caulking air seal package at the plates and up top. When you're wrapping your spray foam up top here, there's usually some sort of connections in here. Since you're not interfering with the drywall, you can overspray a lot of the stuff that's up inside here. Make sure you get your nominal thickness is in the middle, but then over top of the transitions where wood meets wood and there's joints and seams, make sure you get plenty of overspray on all of that, because the overspray is going to stop the air from going through it. So don't just place your spray foam in the middle and there and no further. You want to roll it over all of the dissimilar connections. Obviously, this double top plate's got to be caulked. All right, moving on into basements. Okay, there's two ways that RE builders are going to do basements, and that is going to be they'll bat them, to the ones that are financially strapped, or for whatever reason they don't want to fireproof, they don't want to finish, they don't want to spend the money, whatever, they're going to bat them, and they're just going to get the joist ends done. One of the most critical connections is going to be making sure you lap the joint from the box inward. So where there's a connection here, I'll scroll in here, zoom in. This space here, the walls are spaced, the frost wall or the wood wall that's here is spaced ahead. So they're using 2x4 framing spaced away from the wall so they can use a 2x6 bat and still have an airspace behind it. Again, I've gone over in length of detail. Go check out the video that I've got on why putting fiberglass insulation in a basement is a fail. You're going to have water, you're going to have condensation inside in cold weather climate where it's extremely cold. But if we're just coming in to do joist ends, there's got to be some sort of a poly strip or a wood strip or starter strip, as we call it. If they haven't put the framing up yet, there's got to be some sort of transition so that the spray foam installer can go right from the underside of the floor over top of the box beam, bridge the gap, and give an air seal at the top of the wall. That way, when the poly guys are doing their final termination, they are not having to poly and put a flap over top of it to seal the top of the foundation wall. They are just bringing theirs to the double plate and terminating it no further. I really believe that when using spray foam insulation in a basement, this is exclusively going to be a closed cell product. Open cell foam cannot get wet, shouldn't get wet, and therefore, you don't want to be putting a membrane or a liner or poly up against here because the foam isn't going to stick to it. So you just switch out to the better product, which is the closed cell. Get yourself 2, maybe 3 inches, the absolute most. I try to get guys to go with 2 inches of closed cell for the most part, 2 to 2.5. The reason being is that it's very affordable compared to 3, and it's going to give all the performance of 3 without the 3's price. Under slab is an option as well. If they're doing in-floor heat or even wanted insulation underneath 4-inch concrete slab, that's fine. So we'd be coming in and we'd be spraying either from the edge of the footing or over top of the footing. There's great debate on whether or not we should be over top of it. We've got the approvals to go over top of the footing so that the concrete can be 100% laid on top of the thermal break and not be needing to be in direct concrete contact at the edges here. In fact, when using closed cell spray foam, you have the ability here before any of the walls are framed to come straight down the concrete, over top of the footing, onto the rock and across, and do 100% seal. And then your concrete would be poured, your rebar would be laid, your in-floor heat lines if you're using that, and then the concrete would be poured into that system and be sitting right on top of the foam shell. So you'd have a foam shell of continuous radon seal, vapor seal, insulation all the way. And I think that's amazing. Any future building that I would be doing, I'd be putting a little bit of spray foam on the outside of the foundation before backfill, and then I'd still be doing the entire envelope on the inside. Now, a lot of people ask us in basement videos, why don't you just go all the way down on the outside of the foundation? Wouldn't that be better? Allow the thermal mass? Yeah, you're correct, except a couple of things. The 2 to 3 feet that's exposed, you then have to transition here on the outside of the house. I mean, this is showing the garage here, but if we slid over to the outside of the house, this 2 or 3 feet here, it's going to screw up the stucco detail, the siding detail, so then a piece of flashing and trim and extra detail. Now, to anybody that's got any brains, that's no big deal, but builders like a Happy Meal deal. They like simplicity. They don't necessarily want to have to deal with an additional transition. In 18 years of business that I've been doing spray foam, we've done external basements maybe 4 times, 3 times that I can think of right now. Then you've got to have some sort of a board or a covering over top of this to protect it from ultraviolet. And then it's also weather dependent. So you're not dealing with it when it rains, you're not dealing with it when it's extremely windy, and you're certainly not doing this externally when it is cold. So you add up all 4 of those points, the detail at the top, the ultraviolet with it, the rain, the weather, the cold, and it just comes a big no. Most people want to do the inside. So let them tar and put the damp proofing externally, let them put their weeping tile in place, and then come in and give them your 2 or your 3 inches of closed cell on the inside, wrap it up to the top, and you've got a awesome warm basement. So there you sort of have it, folks. Walls, roofs, bedrooms or living space that are over top of garages or decks or outside cold zones, and your standard basement details. Most of these are closed cell foam exclusives. I mean, the one that I would say should definitely be closed cell is when you have in-ground situations or under slab situations. They're closed cell all the way, basement walls, cinder block walls, or poured concrete. Just don't need to have problems with moisture. Open cell foam is susceptible to moisture moving through it. unlike closed. So if you want to do your walls in open cell, you want to do your roof in open cell, fine. You want to do the bonus room floor open cell, I don't have a problem with it. You go with the right product for your climate zone, the province, the state that you're living in, and also the budget that you can afford. But most people these days are really coming back around to the old standby, which is 2-pound density closed cell foam. So this video is long enough already. If you've made it this far in showing you about spray foam, I congratulate you for sticking around. Lay a comment. Tell us what you're thinking. I'd like to hear and see. Stick around for the final video and we'll wrap it up as to what the responsibilities are for the spray foam installer, the homeowner, the end user, and the general contractor. Catch you on the next one.